All right, get ready to dive into some deep waters today, folks. We're tackling the mind of Carl Jung, the world of psychoanalysis, and his ideas about the human psyche. We'll be exploring the unconscious, dreams, and even childhood development, so consider this your official fasten your seatbelts warning.
We're definitely going deep today, and for this deep dive, we'll be looking at one of Jung's lecture series called Psychic Conflicts in a Child, which may sound a little odd. I mean, what kind of psychic conflicts could a child possibly have, right?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like, little kids haven't really had time to build up a lot of baggage yet, have they?
You'd be surprised. Jung's work shows that even the youngest minds grapple with some pretty complex stuff, and observing children can actually give us a unique window into how the psyche develops.
Interesting. So we're talking psychoanalysis, right? That makes me think of Freud's cigars and all his theories about,
Yes, Freud. Well, Jung actually started out as a follower of Freud, but eventually their ideas diverged. While Freud was very focused on the past, particularly childhood experiences and repressed memories, Jung was more interested in how our past shapes our present and future. He also placed a lot more emphasis on symbolism and the power of the unconscious mind, especially as it relates to personal growth.
So it's less about digging up buried trauma and more about understanding the hidden patterns and symbols that shape our thoughts and behaviors.
That's a great way to put it. And for this deep dive, we're going to be exploring some of Jung's key ideas through the lens of childhood. We'll look at how children's dreams, fantasies, and even their struggles can shed light on the workings of the human psyche.
Okay, now I'm really intrigued. So where do we start? Did Jung have like a go-to case study when it came to kids?
Well, he studied a lot of children, but one that particularly stands out is the case of a 4-year-old girl named Anna.
Okay, Anna. What was so special about her?
She was a bright and lively little girl with a real thirst for knowledge. But what fascinated Jung was how she grappled with these really complex questions, particularly about childbirth. And when she couldn't get satisfying answers from the adults around her, she started turning inwards, relying more on her own imagination and intuition.
So like instead of asking why a million times, she just created her own explanations in her head.
Exactly. And this inward focus, what Jung termed introversion, wasn't just a way of avoiding reality. It was how Anna processed her fears, made sense of things on her own terms, and ultimately how she began to develop her own unique personality.
That makes sense. Kids are constantly trying to figure out the world around them, and when they can't find the answers, they have to get creative.
Did Jung see this kind of thing in other kids too, this turning inward? He did. And he saw it as a natural part of child development, a way for kids to process their experiences and create meaning in a world that often feels confusing or overwhelming. In fact, he believed that this tendency towards introversion, towards exploring our inner world, is something that stays with us throughout our lives. It's what drives our search for self-knowledge, our fascination with dreams and symbols, and ultimately our desire to make sense of our place in the universe.
Whoa, okay, so from a 4-year-old pondering childbirth, we've gone straight to the meaning of life. But I guess that makes sense. If we start turning inward as kids, those big questions are bound to pop up sooner or later, right?
Exactly. And this brings us to one of Jung's most groundbreaking concepts, the collective unconscious.
Okay, here's where things get really interesting. Collective unconscious. So are we talking about like a shared mind or something? Are we all linked telepathically?
Not quite telepathy, but the idea is that beneath our individual unconscious, beneath all our personal memories and experiences, there's this deeper layer that we all share. It's like a vast reservoir of primal images, instincts, and archetypes, these universal symbolic figures that appear across cultures and throughout history.
Okay, that's a lot to take in. So it's like a shared pool of, I don't know, ancient wisdom or something that we all tap into.
You got it. And Jung believed that this collective unconscious influences everything from our dreams and fears to our creative impulses and spiritual experiences. He saw it as the source of our deepest intuition, our sense of connection to something larger than ourselves, and even our capacity for love and compassion.
Okay, so we're all connected on this deep unconscious level. It's a pretty mind-blowing concept. But how do we know this collective unconscious even exists?
Well, Jung pointed to the fact that certain symbols and motifs appear again and again in dreams, myths, and religions across vastly different cultures. It's like these archetypes, the hero, the wise old man, the trickster, for example, are imprinted on our collective psyche, and they keep popping up in different forms throughout history.
So it's like there's this universal language of symbols that speaks to something deep within us, regardless of our individual backgrounds or beliefs.
Exactly. And for Jung, understanding this symbolic language, learning to recognize these archetypes in our own lives, was key to unlocking the deeper meaning behind our experiences. He believed that by becoming aware of these archetypal patterns, we can gain valuable insights into ourselves, our relationships, and even our place in the grand scheme of things.
Okay, I'm starting to see how all this connects. So we've got this collective unconscious, this shared pool of archetypes and symbols, and then we've got our own individual unconscious, which is shaped by our personal experiences and memories. And somewhere in between all of that, our personality develops.
You're catching on quickly. It's a complex interplay between the personal and the collective, the conscious and the unconscious. And it's a lifelong process of becoming, of integrating all these different aspects of ourselves into a whole and unique individual.
That's fascinating, but also kind of daunting. So much is going on beneath the surface. Is there like a roadmap for this whole individuation thing? How do we even begin to navigate all of this?
Well, Jung believed that dreams are a key part of that navigation system. He saw them as a direct line to the unconscious, a way for it to communicate with our conscious mind. He believed they offer valuable insights into our deepest fears, desires, and potential.
Dreams. That makes me think of all those weird symbolic dreams I have that I never understand. Are you saying they could be trying to tell me something important?
Absolutely. Jung believed that every dream has a purpose, even the ones that seem nonsensical or scary. He saw them as messages from the unconscious, often disguised in symbolic language. And he developed a whole system of dream interpretation to help us decipher those messages and gain a deeper understanding of ourselves.
Wow, okay, so my dreams aren't just random firings of neurons. They're like secret messages from the depths of my psyche.
You could say that. And by learning to pay attention to those messages, by becoming fluent in the language of symbols, we can tap into a whole new level of self-awareness and insight.
This is making me think differently about my own dreams. And it makes me wonder, if dreams are so important for understanding ourselves, where do they fit into this bigger picture of individuation and personal growth? How does it all connect?
That's a great question, and it's one that Jung explored deeply. He saw the process of individuation as a lifelong journey of becoming whole, of integrating our conscious and unconscious selves. And he believed that dreams play a crucial role in that journey by providing us with guidance, challenges, and ultimately a deeper understanding of who we are.
Okay, I'm starting to see how all these pieces fit together. The collective unconscious, our individual unconscious, dreams, and this lifelong process of becoming. It's like a giant, ever-evolving puzzle. But I think we need to take a break here and let our listeners process all of this. We've covered a lot of ground in this first part of our deep dive into Carl Jung.
Yes, we have. But we've only just begun to scratch the surface of his ideas. There's so much more to explore, from the role of relationships in our psychological development to the challenges and opportunities of aging.
I can't wait to dive into all of that in our next part. Listeners, stay tuned, because we're going even deeper into the fascinating world of Carl Jung. Welcome back, everyone, and get ready for round 2 of our Jungian deep dive. Last time we explored the collective unconscious, the power of dreams, and even met little Anna, who grappled with those big questions about childbirth. But we ended on a bit of a cliffhanger, talking about relationships and this whole concept of unconscious projection.
Ah, yes, projection.
Okay.
It's one of those fascinating psychological phenomena that can make relationships both incredibly exciting and incredibly frustrating.
I can definitely relate to that. I've had my fair share of experiences where I realized, maybe a little too late, that I was projecting my own fantasies or expectations onto someone. And let's just say, it doesn't always end well.
No, it usually doesn't. And that's the tricky thing about projections. They often operate beneath the surface, outside of our conscious awareness. We don't even realize we're doing it until things start to, well, fall apart.
Right, so it's like we're setting ourselves up for disappointment by projecting these idealized images onto our partners without even realizing it. But how do we become more aware of these projections? Is there like a way to catch ourselves in the act?
That's where Jung's ideas about the anima and animus come in. Remember, these are those archetypes that represent the unconscious feminine in men and the unconscious masculine in women. They're like these internal blueprints that shape how we experience and relate to the opposite sex.
All right, I remember us talking about that. And you said that we're often drawn to people who embody these unconscious images, even if we're not fully aware of it.
Exactly. And that's where things can get complicated. Let's say, for example, you're a man who's always been drawn to women who are nurturing and compassionate, qualities that are often associated with the anima. You might unconsciously project those qualities onto a woman you meet, even if she doesn't actually embody them fully.
Okay, I see where this is going. So then When she inevitably acts in ways that don't fit this idealized image, the projection crumbles and boom, there's conflict.
Exactly. And the same dynamic can play out for women projecting their animus, their unconscious masculine image, onto men. It's not about blaming the archetypes themselves, but about becoming aware of how they might be operating in our relationships.
So awareness is key. But how do we even begin to become aware of these unconscious patterns? It's not like we can just, look in the mirror and suddenly see them, right?
Well, it does take a certain level of, let's say, psychological self-reflection. Paying attention to your dreams can be helpful, as dreams often reveal those unconscious dynamics that we might not be fully conscious of in our waking life. And therapy, especially working with a Jungian analyst, can also provide a safe and supportive space to explore these patterns in more depth.
Okay, so it takes effort. We have to actively look for those patterns. But what happens once we start to see them? How does that actually change our relationships?
Well, that's where the real work begins. Once we become aware of those projections, we can start to differentiate between our own needs and desires and those of our partner. We can begin to see them as individuals, as they truly are, rather than as projections of our own unconscious fantasies.
That sounds like it would require a lot of honesty and communication.
It definitely does. It's about being willing to have those sometimes difficult conversations, to own up to our projections, and to be open to seeing things from our partner's perspective. And it requires a certain level of, humility. We have to be willing to admit that we don't always have it all figured out.
Right. It's not about being right or wrong, but about understanding and accepting each other, even those parts that might not fit our initial expectations. This is making me think about Jung's idea of individuation, that process of becoming a whole and integrated self. Is there a connection between individuation and having healthy relationships?
There's a definite connection. Jung believed that we can't truly have authentic relationships unless we're on the path of individuation ourselves. Because it's only through that process of self-discovery, of confronting our shadow selves and integrating those different aspects of our personality, that we can show up in a relationship as a whole, an authentic individual.
So it's not about finding the perfect partner, but about becoming a more whole and self-aware person ourselves.
That's a great way to put it. And when both partners are committed to their own individuation, the relationship can become a container for growth and transformation for both individuals.
That's a beautiful way to think about it, a container for growth. But it also sounds like a lot of work. Is it even realistic to expect that kind of, conscious evolution from most relationships?
It's not always easy, that's for sure. But Jung believed that true love, the kind of love that can withstand the tests of time, requires that willingness to face those challenges, to confront the shadow side of ourselves and our partners, and to continuously evolve together.
So it's not about finding someone who completes us, but about finding someone who challenges us to become more fully ourselves.
Exactly. And that brings us to another interesting aspect of Jung's view on relationships, the idea of the contained and the container.
Or contained and container, what are those?
Well, Jung observed that in many relationships, one partner tends to be more contained, meaning they're more invested in the relationship, maybe more emotionally dependent on the other person, and the other partner acts as the container. They might have a broader perspective, more outside interests, and maybe even seem less emotionally engaged at times.
That's interesting. So it's like one partner needs the relationship more than the other.
Not necessarily needs it more, but experiences it differently. The contained partner often feels a sense of security and stability within the relationship, while the container partner might feel more restless or even stifled at times.
I can see how that dynamic could create some tension. The contained partner might feel abandoned or neglected, while the container partner might feel suffocated or trapped.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that these roles aren't fixed. They can shift and change over time depending on the individuals and the circumstances. But understanding this dynamic can help couples navigate those challenges with more awareness and compassion.
So it's not about judging who's right or wrong, but about recognizing those different ways that each partner experiences the relationship. But what happens when those differences become too great? Can a contained container relationship ever really work?
It can work, but it requires a lot of understanding and flexibility from both partners. The container needs to be willing to provide that reassurance and emotional support to the contained partner without feeling pressured to change who they are. And the contained partner needs to develop that sense of independence and security outside of the relationship, so they're not putting all their emotional eggs in one basket, so to speak.
That makes a lot of sense. And it makes me think about all the different relationship dynamics I've seen in my own life and how complex they can be. But it's also giving me hope that even seemingly incompatible personalities can find a way to connect and grow together if they're both willing to put in the work.
That's the beauty of Jung's work. It reminds us that relationships are ultimately journeys of self-discovery, both individually and collectively. There will be challenges and conflicts along the way, but also moments of profound connection and growth. And that's what makes it all worthwhile.
That's a really inspiring perspective on love. It's not about finding someone who completes us, but finding someone who challenges us to become more fully ourselves.
You got it. And that brings us to another fascinating dimension of Jung's thought, one that's particularly relevant as we move into the second half of life.
All right, deep divers, welcome back for the final leg of our journey into the world of Carl Jung. We've covered a lot of ground so far, from childhood dreams to the complexities of relationships, but now I'm really curious to explore how Jung's ideas can help us navigate the later stages of life.
Ah, yes, the second half of life. Jung was particularly fascinated by this stage of development, He believed it held unique potential for growth and transformation, a time when we can really delve into those deeper layers of the psyche.
That's interesting. When most people think about psychology, they think about childhood, trauma, all those early experiences. But Jung was saying that the second half of life is equally important, maybe even more so when it comes to, figuring ourselves out.
Exactly. Remember that concept of individuation we've been talking about, that lifelong process of becoming a whole and integrated self? Well, Jung believed that this process really comes into its own as we age.
So it's not just about working through our childhood baggage. It's about continuing to evolve and become more fully ourselves throughout our entire lives.
Precisely. And in midlife and beyond, that process of individuation often involves confronting some pretty big existential questions. Questions about meaning, purpose, our legacy, even our mortality.
Whoa, okay, so things get even deeper as we venture further into the depths of the unconscious. But I thought Jung said that the unconscious isn't something to be feared.
Right. It's not about fearing the unconscious. It's about recognizing it as a source of wisdom and guidance. It's where those archetypes reside, those universal patterns of human experience that can help illuminate our path, especially as we enter the later stages of life.
Okay, so how does that work practically? How can understanding the unconscious, actually help us navigate those big questions about meaning and purpose and all that?
Well, for one thing, Jung believed that as we age, our relationship with the archetypes changes. They become more prominent in our dreams, our thoughts, even our everyday experiences. And by paying attention to these archetypal patterns, we can gain some valuable insights into ourselves and the path we're on.
So, those recurring dreams I've been having about climbing mountains and crossing thresholds, those could be archetypes trying to tell me something.
They certainly could. Jung believed that dreams in the second half of life often point us toward greater wholeness, towards integrating those parts of ourselves we've neglected or denied, those hidden potentials that are waiting to be realized.
It makes me think of the shadow self we talked about. Does that become even more important to confront as we get older?
Absolutely. Integrating the shadow, those aspects of ourselves that we've repressed or disowned, is essential for individuation at any age. But it becomes particularly crucial in the second half of life. It's about acknowledging those darker parts of ourselves, our flaws, our regrets, and finding ways to embrace them as part of our wholeness.
That sounds like a tough but also incredibly liberating process, like facing those demons head on so we can finally move forward.
Exactly. By integrating our shadow, we free up a tremendous amount of energy that was previously spent on repression and denial. And that energy can be channeled towards creativity, self-acceptance, and a deeper sense of purpose.
So it's not about being perfect, it's about becoming whole. And that wholeness, that integration of all those different parts of ourselves is what allows us to live more authentic and fulfilling lives.
That's the idea. And this process of coming to terms with our past, with our shadow, is often accompanied by a shift in priorities. Jung observed that many people in midlife and beyond experience a kind of turning inward, a desire for deeper meaning and connection that goes beyond external achievements.
So it's like a shift from doing to being, from focusing on career or material success to something more, soulful.
That's a great way to put it. And this shift can manifest in different ways. Some people find solace in spiritual practices, others in creative pursuits, still others in spending more time in nature or with loved ones. It's about finding what truly nourishes the soul, what gives life meaning and purpose beyond the material world.
It sounds like there's no one-size-fits-all approach to navigating the second half of life. It's about listening to our own inner compass and figuring out what works for us.
Exactly. It's about trusting our own intuition and wisdom, even if it goes against the grain of what society tells us we should be doing at this stage of life. Remember, the journey of individuation is unique for each individual.
So it's about embracing that uniqueness, even if it means going against the norm, not letting society dictate how we should age or what we should be doing with our time.
Right. Because for Jung, the second half of life isn't about decline or withdrawal. It's about discovering a new kind of vitality, a wisdom that comes from having lived, loved, and learned from our experiences.
This is making me completely rethink everything I thought I knew about aging. Instead of fearing it, we can embrace it as an opportunity for continued growth and self-discovery.
And remember, this isn't just about personal fulfillment. Jung believed that by engaging in our own individuation, we actually contribute to the evolution of consciousness as a whole. We become more aware, more compassionate, more connected to something larger than ourselves.
Wow, so it's like a ripple effect. Our individual journeys of becoming actually impact the world around us.
Exactly. And as we each find our unique path, as we each strive to become more fully ourselves, we inspire others to do the same. And that's how we create a more conscious, compassionate, and interconnected world.
It's such a beautiful and inspiring thought. Well, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive into the world of Carl Jung. It's been an incredible journey.
It has been a pleasure sharing this exploration with you.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this Jungian adventure. We encourage you to continue exploring these ideas, to delve into your own dreams and unconscious, and to embrace the ongoing journey of becoming. Remember, the unconscious is a powerful ally, a source of wisdom and guidance that can help us live more meaningful and fulfilling lives, no matter our age. Until next time, happy deep diving.